Hello, you beautiful souls, you gods and goddesses who are watching live now and will maybe watch later when we are no longer live. Thank you for joining the first ever episode of Answering the Call. So, what does that mean to answer the call? So, it's something that we talk about in life when we talk about the hero's journey, and we are all heroes and heroines in our own story and our own journey. And there is a journey and a destination and a life of bliss waiting for all of us. So, what does it mean to answer the call? Well, the journey is, it's our choice to take it, right? It could be a journey toward our highest goals, our purpose, our passion, our greatest success. We may answer many calls in our life. Some real life examples or some fictional examples for would be Dorothy in The Wizard of Oz. She gets flung into Oz, and then she is met by Glinda the Good Witch, who tells her to follow the yellow brick road, and Dorothy decides to answer the call and take that trip to the Emerald City and begin her journey. In The Matrix, we have Neo, who was a programmer in what he thought was his ordinary world, and he saw a note on his screen that said, "Awaken, Neo, and follow the white rabbit," and he decided to follow the white rabbit to a new adventure, a new journey, a new truth, a new purpose. And so we see it in fiction a lot, where the hero begins their journey towards their destination. And we see it in our own lives, maybe not quite so dramatically, but we see it in our own lives where we have these opportunities that come about that give us the opportunity to decide if we're going to take up the adventure, take on the call, take on the journey towards whatever it might be, towards that personal growth, towards our goals, towards our dreams, towards a life that we want that's different than the life that we're living. And so today I get to welcome Justine Harrington. I'm so excited. Justine is the founder and owner of Solas Digital Consulting. She is a life activation practitioner. She is a fellow Kabbalist, an amazing human, and I'm going to welcome her now.
Okay, awesome. Oh, good.
Hi,
I was
Justine.
like, I
How are
don't know
you?
how to do this. Okay, let me just adjust my camera a little bit. Thank you for having me on, Athena.
Thank you for joining. And so I don't know if you heard, I had a little bit of an introduction where I explained sort of what answering the call was. We talked a little bit about, I talked a little bit about, we see it in the fictional world, right? I think Harry Potter's call is when he gets a letter from Hogwarts and decides if he's going to go. And we see it in movies and in film and in books and on TV. But we also see it in our own lives. And what's really cool is we get to be the heroes and heroines of our own lives. And that's something that I really learned through our mutual, where we mutually met. So I met Justine through the Modern Mystery School. I had the profoundly amazing experience of going through a healing with her. It was beautiful. And Justine is a beautiful human, so welcome and thank you for joining. I'm so glad you're here.
I'm so glad to be here. Thank you so much.
Yay, thank you. And Justine's joining us all the way from Texas, so I appreciate that as well. So Justine, tell me a little bit about yourself and where you are in the present. So where you are living right now that maybe your journey has gotten you to this place. So tell people who are watching a little bit about that.
Yeah, totally. I mean, okay, first of all, I loved your intro about the hero's journey because I feel like, I mean, we'll talk about it on today, but my life is certainly been a journey in like all amazing ways, actually. Like, you know, there, like, if you study the hero's journey, there are challenges along the way, and there's a lot of just like surrender that's involved with the process. In like taking that next step in like up leveling your life. And so my life has definitely, especially in the last like 2 to 4 years, like really taken that journey, and it, like I've accelerated a lot. So I guess, so where I am right now I'm in Austin, Texas. I just moved here 2 months ago. Um, and I own my own business, which if you told me that 10 years ago, like I would be like, you're kidding me. Like there's no way. So I own my own business. I have a digital marketing consulting firm, and I do some coaching and advisement for entrepreneurs. And I have a great relationship. I have a beautiful house. Like there's a lot of really good things happening in my life right now. I'm really, really grateful for that. And I guess if we fast forward, because in a journey there's a starting point and there's an end point, right?
Right.
I grew up in South Shore, Massachusetts, which is a big part of my identity. I come from a big Irish Catholic family. I love my family. Like everyone just like really funny and joyful, very like connected, loyal. And that's, you know, a big part of my foundation and a big part of my identity. And if I'm really being honest, I was kind of a strange kid. I was a really strange kid. Like I think back, I was telling my boyfriend as I was getting ready for the call today, like some of the stories of my childhood, and I was just so strange. I was really curious and I was really creative. So like to give like kind of like a funny anecdote, like as like a 5-year-old, like my parents would like walk in on me reading the encyclopedia. Like I was like reading the encyclopedia and like learning all the different things in the encyclopedia, and just like kind of like funny things like that, and like quizzing myself on like the state capitals at like 7, like just strange things like that. I was very curious. And I was also really creative. I ended up going to art school, which like has everything and nothing to do with what I'm doing now in digital marketing. And I mean, something actually really significant about my childhood. I know we're like, this isn't a podcast about childhood, but it's like a really big
No.
part of my identity.
Yeah.
Is I was selectively mute. So as a child, I didn't speak. So like from preschool until like 3rd grade, I was like completely anxious and afraid to like to speak. And that's been a really like you talk about like the journey, and like for me, like I've had repeated lessons around like showing myself and present and like expressing myself. Like I have a real deep soul desire to create and express, but mirrored with that, I've always had like an intense amount of shyness, starting from childhood, like not speaking as a child. So I got out of that. Like even as a kid, like I was a very tenacious kid, and like facing challenges. I did like drama. I like did theater as a child. Like kid that doesn't speak at school, but then does theater after school. Like it doesn't make any sense. Like kind of that dichotomy. And I would do like, I did like debate club in high school. Incredibly shy, and I like knew that I had to get out of my shyness to like get to the next step. So I did debate. And then, I mean, this relates to now because as we fast forward through the years, the first job I take out of art school is a job in sales, because of course, why would you go to school for art and then not do sales, right? So I take a job in sales and then like quickly accelerate up the path in sales. I did advertising sales and then digital marketing sales, and like accrued like this encyclopedia knowledge of like best practices of digital marketing. And then 2 years ago, this thing called COVID-19 shows up, the pandemic. I finally get to the point through Kabbalah, through like the class that we just took. I got my dream job. Everything on paper was like my dream job. I lived in New York City, which was always a huge like dream of mine. And then I lost my job. And so I found this a lot on the journey with myself, is like, you know, I created my life to this point where I was like, everything in my life is exactly how I want it to look. I've achieved like the career goals that I have. I'm living in like an amazing city. I was starting to make friends. Like things were really looking good, and then I lost all of it. Um, but like in losing everything, it like created this cavity for me to then fill it up with something even better. And I started my business. I like this the day that I got the call that I lost my job, I got on the phone, I called like everyone in my network. I messaged everyone in my network. Um, and I feel a little weird saying this, but I'm gonna say it anyways. I like 1 month in, after like going from not having a job and like losing my job, I made like over $10,000.
Wow.
Because
That's
I like
amazing.
that just off of my network and off of like just like facing the challenge and going after it. And like,
That's amazing.
yeah. So like my life has been kind of a repeated, not, and this is a little bit of a long answer, but like my life has shown like repeated instances of like having a challenge, like being afraid to speak, and then facing that challenge with like doing theater
Right.
or being afraid to show myself, and then getting a job in sales, which is like the most vulnerable career you could possibly go into, or
Right.
your job,
Yeah.
and then like
Well,
attacking and going for it.
it's so beautiful what you're saying, because I'm listening and I'm hearing kind of this one long hero's journey that is like life, right?
Yeah.
So these like one whole story. So, there's and all of us have that, obviously. I mean, just by taking our first breath and having our soul come into our body, and, really we're answering a call to action right then by, the entire adventure that is our life and humanity and our experience in this body on this earth. And then I'm hearing all these really cool, mini, sort of not mini journeys, and I think that we do take many journeys in our lives. I don't think there's one time where we get one call ever and we choose to answer that call, and then, the journey is done and that's it. And we've reached the kingdom or whatever it may be, and then we're done. And I don't think that's what happens. And so, you had this, you said you were selectively mute, but yet you had the call to do theater. But like the dragon you had to slay along the way was that fear of talking. And then, it happened again as you got older and you did debate club. And it happened again, out of art school, you, for whatever reason, and I don't believe there's coincidences ever. I don't think anything happened, right? Like nothing happens by chance. There was a reason you went into sales. There was a reason that you answered that call, because it brought you to where you are now. So I would say most recently, I heard you say 10 years ago, I never would have believed that I would have this. Why do you say that? Where were you 10 years ago? What was life, Justine, like 10 years ago?
I mean, like, as I look back, it makes sense. Like, if I even look at Justine from 10 years ago, it makes sense. But at the time, I think my self-esteem was at a point where I just like I just didn't think that was possible. I just didn't believe in myself enough, and I'm still working on that. Like that doesn't go away necessarily right away, but 10 years ago, so this summer I have my 10-year anniversary of college graduation, which is like great.
Oh, wow.
I have my 10-year reunion this summer. So I was graduated from college. I had just started my job working in advertising sales for this local magazine in Boston, which was like, to this day, like the best job I ever had. It was so much fun. And yeah, I mean, I got some of those gritty skills of like the first job I ever had was I was a commission-only sales rep for this magazine, selling like literally classified advertising out of the magazine, the back of the magazine, and I was commission-only, so I didn't have a salary. I think I made like $29,000 the first year out of college, and it was all commission. It was like all the fruits of my own efforts. It was like really, really rewarding. And even though I saw that grit back then, the thing is, and this is another repeated pattern in my life, is like, even though I was doing it's like, it feels weird even saying these things, but like, even though I was doing like amazing things, I still didn't like see the reality for what it was. And I still felt like my potential was like squandered and that my potential was so low. And I didn't see like what reality actually was, which was that like I was working hard and I was breaking through these fears,
Right.
even as a 22-year-old.
So what changed? So I told you this. I remember you sort of said this when we were speaking. The first time we actually really had a chance to speak with each other in the Berkshires at our Kabbalah weekend.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, you said something along the lines of that you didn't feel, or that you don't always feel like powerful or strong or like a leader. And I said, that's so strange, because to me, like, you were a person in this room of like 60 some people. Like, you were one of the people that I was always like looking for to ask a question, or that like I saw as this like figure of like knowledge and authority. And like, you just radiate to me. You radiate this like sense of like leadership and purpose and knowledge. And so it was interesting how I think we see ourselves and how the world also sees us, because I was like, really? Like, she feels self-conscious sometimes. Like, we all do, right? Everybody does. I think that's true, but you definitely have this way of presenting yourself where you take up the room or space in like a really good way. Like, you're present and you can see that you're there. So it's interesting that you mentioned that you didn't feel like you had the self-confidence. Like, so fast forwarding to now, and then 2 years ago, especially when you lost your job and the pandemic hit, which was really a crazy, scary, disastrous, who knows what's going on sort of time for everybody. And then on top of it, to lose your job, what I feel like it sounds like to me that, would you agree that like losing your job was kind of your call at the time to this
Yeah,
new
losing my
adventure?
job, breakups, like all of those things are my call. I wish they weren't, but they are. Like, I wish as humans we could learn lessons without falling on our face.
Right?
It'd be a lot nicer, wouldn't it?
It would be so much more
Yeah,
comfortable.
be
Life would
way
be a
more
lot easier.
comfortable. Yeah, I
Right.
think discomfort is part of my call. I shouldn't say that out loud, but it's like,
Right. No, I
yeah.
think that's the case for everyone. I don't know anybody I don't think there's too many people in the world who could say that they've truly learned a lesson or changed their lives or grown or any of those things without sort of falling first or breaking down. Like, I think you have to like rebuild the foundation sometimes. You have to like break down the building and rebuild it from the ground up to truly make it something amazing. And I think that most of us who have had the most profound transformations are those of us who have fallen the hardest, or whether it be internally or externally. You see the most amazing transformations from that fall. And so, what gave you the courage, though? You said you called people, and that day you got on the phone with your contacts.
Yeah, I'll tell you exactly what happened. So, like, I had done so much work to get to New York City. I won't get into like too much of the details, but like, I mean, I was pretty fallen. Like, I had, if you looked like 5 years prior to that, I had gone through a really, really traumatic breakup with an abusive ex-boyfriend. Um, and I had lost my job a couple of times. I've lost my job, I think, 2 or 3 times in my life, which was like, also like, losing a job is incredibly traumatic. It doesn't matter what the reasons were for why you lost the job. It's like every single time it's a traumatic event. And I mean, I think I was facing a lot of the things that a lot of women in their late 20s face, like really low self-worth, especially after that breakup with the boyfriend, facing just like very low self-confidence. And like, and it's funny what you were saying about how like the way I take up space. It's something I've worked really hard at. And I find that like I do a lot. I'm almost like a hypochondriac about doing inner work, which is like a good and a bad thing. It's like a double-edged sword, because I am like incredibly self-critical, And like, I'm always willing to put in the work to like heal the things that are in my inner world. But I never, you know, we learn in our tradition through the mystery school, the Hermetics, like as above, so below, as within, so without. The more work you do inside, the more it starts to show outside of you. And so, like, I don't even remember the original question that you had, but like, the more
No,
work that I was doing, like,
right.
on the inside through some of these, like, kind of like little t traumas that throughout my like later half of my 20s and you know even some stuff earlier in my life, um I've been doing a lot of inner work around like self-worth, taking up space,
Hmm.
like listening to myself, showing myself, expressing myself without fear of judgment. That's a big one for me. um and like the more work I've been doing inside, the more like I don't even know. It's just this like internal drive. It's like a better connection to like my heart and like a deeper connection to like something that's outside of myself that gives me that courage to like take the next step. So that like even when you're experiencing like that little T trauma, um, you can like move through it and out of it, and then it's gone. Or
Yeah.
it's smaller than it was before because like the bigger that I got, the smaller these things got in my life.
Right. Well, and you did answer the question because I had said, like, what gave you the courage to say, okay, like I'm confident enough that yes, this traumatic thing happened. I lost my job. There's this craziness going on in the world, but you said you answered the call and then or you literally picked up the phone and made the call to people
Mhm.
and in that first month made $10,000 in doing that in your own business. And I think what I heard you saying in answer to that was what gave you the courage was this inner work and,
Mhm.
working on the things in yourself that you needed to heal and work on and the things that you said got so much smaller that used to feel so big and got
Totally.
smaller. So
Yeah.
you have the confidence to
Hmm.
make these calls. And clearly people heard that confidence and heard and believed in you because they worked with you. And that obviously, came from you. People
Yeah.
felt that they can work with you.
And I kind of remember now what my original train of thought was, which was like, you know, I went through all those traumas and then I worked so hard to get to where I was, like where I thought was the top. Like I thought, and I think this is a really interesting point too, is like I thought I was at the top. I had my dream job. I was working in product as a product strategist for the software company in New York City. Like I had a position of authority. I was working with executives. Um, I was making decisions for the software company, like product decisions, and it was like, oh wow, like I've kind of made it. Like I can see the trajectory right now for my career, and like I'm living in New York City, which was always a huge dream of mine. And like things were kind of working out. I was dating again after not dating for a couple of years, and like things were starting to move in the right direction. And then when that happened, when I lost my job, it was like grabbing the thing that I thought was the best it could ever get and like ripping it away from me. And I was like, I will, and I came back from that experience like I will not allow that to happen. Like I've worked too damn hard to get all of this taken away from me. And like, you know what? In the back of my mind, I've always kind of had that bug in my ear, like, you should just own your own business. You should start your own business. And I was like, you know what? Like, I don't know if I'm going to be able to get a job in this economy, so I might as well just see if it's like even viable. So I took like that fire from like being so upset about that being ripped away from me, and I like channeled it in
Yeah.
like really powerful ways.
So thinking back now, do you
Mm-hmm.
still think that that was the pinnacle? Like, do you still feel that
Mm,
that's true?
no, God, no. Oh my gosh, no. I've like
Mhm.
my inner world, my mind is so different than I was 2 years ago. Like I think especially in the work that we do in studying Kabbalah, like I've
Right.
been through two Kabbalah trees since then. And like I've done so much work on my mind and my emotions. And like even then, like I was deeply insecure